Welcome in Rounding the Bases Live, presented by Enterprise Bank and Trust. Happy, I believe it is Wednesday. Yes, it's Wednesday. Happy Wednesday, everyone. Hope you're doing well and continuing to roll on with the shows. Big thanks to my friends over at Enterprise Bank and Trust. Hashtag no stopping you. It's been a phenomenal partnership. Really enjoying these last few months with their support and hope that you'll continue to support them too. Awesome people, great culture. And I think most importantly, I've been mentioning this lately. I got this phone call a couple weeks ago that said, from the president over there, he said, "We see what you have been doing with the conversations about racial injustice and other issues, and we're proud to be partnered with you. We encourage you to continue that." And quite frankly, that was not a conversation I necessarily expected to have. And when it happened, it was like, wow, that's awesome that that they believe in the same things, or at least that ability to have these discussions. And so I'm grateful for that. I'm also grateful for the guest that I have on today because he's become a friend over the last couple of years. I was a fan of him as a musician before we became friends, and now we happen to be in a group together. Shoot, I just realized I didn't even let our group know that Kemet Coleman, aka Kemet the Phantom, is on right now. I got to let the BTC boys know that
Yeah,
I got you on. How are you, my friend? Because I know you got your hands in a lot of different things, which means you got to be a busy man.
yeah, definitely. I've been great though. It's been a fun ride the last couple months, and a lot of people aren't really saying that. And I think about in early March, I wasn't saying that, but overall, I'm doing pretty good, and projects keep rolling in. I'm having fun.
So let's talk. Boy, there's so many things that we could talk about here right now. I do want to talk about your music because I love your music and I love your group, the Fantastics.
Yeah,
I know that you and your wife have a business. You just started a new role. I want to talk to you about your thoughts of what's going on in the city and around the world because you have always been a guy, at least as far as I know, that speaks your mind and has very strong opinions about what is going on in your community. So I'll push that one to the side for the moment. Let's begin with your newest venture and moving over to Startland News. Tell me about that gig.
yeah. So Startland, which is the nonprofit that runs a family of programs that inspire innovation here in Kansas City, kind of building an ecosystem of entrepreneurship and innovation. Startland News is a part of Startland. They are an independent news source that is really kicking butt when it comes to showcasing all that's happening in Kansas City as far as entrepreneurship and innovation goes. Um, yeah, I'm really excited to be a part of Startland. It kind of happened serendipitously. I kind of did a soft inquiry to Adam Arredondo about the role, and the role that they were looking for was not a director position; it was more of a coordinator position, and I had done that in the past with B&IM Architects, also with Brands That Speak, which was one of the main marketing engines behind Open Spaces, the festival. So I'd had my hand in marketing for a long time, and I had a lot of unconventional marketing experience with just music and promoting myself and the Fantastics. So being a director of experiences and marketing at Startland seemed like a pretty nice fit. Especially with my love of Kansas City as well.
Well, you and I talked about that on my audio podcast, your love of Kansas City. And I believe the term that you used at the time was that you are an urbanist,
That's right.
right? And we could talk about that too. And of course, you've got a great song and a video on the streetcar.
Yeah.
I just got caught, by the way, I caught myself taking a selfie of this interview, and I just noticed that that phone was creeping in. But you and I are in this group of guys
Yeah.
that meets once a month for lunch. It's been a little while since I've been there. I'm hoping to get there next month regularly now.
Hmm.
Uh, but I had to send a picture because one of the guys in our group just had a thing with Patrick Mahomes yesterday, and I said, "Well, I come in close second because I got Kemet right now," and there's a little something there.
That's
But
hilarious.
we got a great great group of dudes from all walks of life here in Kansas City, the BTC.
Yeah.
But so you have this Startland job.
Yep.
You also have this amazing company with your wife, and you're the true entrepreneur.
Mhm.
from the music standpoint, but also the business standpoint. Well, those two combine together in some ways. But then here's this other business with your wife that I know had to um, take a pause, like so many others, for a while. Tell me about that business, how it's rebounded, and what you're hearing from your clients or tenants, and then their customers.
Yeah, so when COVID-19 first hit, I believe it was March 13th or something like that. Although it probably hit sooner than that, we just didn't know it. It really had a detrimental effect on the business. The business is called Salon Studios. For those who don't know, my wife is a hairstylist and wanted to essentially scale up as a stylist, and you can't necessarily do that as a service provider. Um, you know, with my marketing experience and with my experience working with property management as an intern at Mac Properties back in 2011, I kind of brought what she needed to help to really support that dream and to make that dream come true for her. We started about half a year ago, or actually a year ago, and when COVID-19 hit, we were, or right before, we were, I'd say about 85 or 95% occupied. And then after COVID-19 hit on around March 13th, about half of our tenants up and left. And, I think, I don't blame them. Uh, I don't really hold a grudge because of that. I mean, it was a wild situation. But what that meant for us was that half of our income from the business was out of the door, and then plus the people that did stay with us, the only reason they probably stayed is because we said, hey, we understand that these circumstances aren't your fault. Um, Here's a month free. Here's 2 months
Mm-hmm.
free if you sign another year contract with us. When everything gets back to normal somewhat, then we'll waive these 2 months for you. And so about half of our tenants did that. But I think we had another tenant that had to leave because of some family circumstances. Neither here nor there, but essentially, right around the time when things were kind of reopening, they had some restrictions, but kind of soft reopening. We started to get an influx of stylists from around the city and the region who were looking for a place that was um, more of a studio setting where everybody has their own independent space. And that's, for those who don't know what Salon Studios is, we have 14 spaces for stylists and anybody in the beauty and wellness and grooming industries to have their own business. And enclosure, you've got your own door, your own locks, your own signs, your own buzz in, all of that stuff. So with the shakeup hair salons around the country, being these open spaces, we were the only ones that had compartmentalized spaces that were able to withstand the COVID-19 collapse, if you will.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
obviously, it wasn't set up, Kemet, for that, but that was a benefit in housing all of these different business is under their own spot. And I've got to imagine now, as their clients have started to come back, there's got to be a comfort level in saying, okay, we're not going into this place with 10 people or 12 people, and so it's got to be much more easy to manage. But I want to go back to something you said, because look, it's easier said than done when you, as let's just say, as the landlord, says, you know what, well, we won't take your payment at this point. We're not going to hold you to that, even though we could,
yeah,
because you know what, you got you got a wife, you got
yeah,
kids, you
yeah.
got to put food on the table. You're not playing music gigs like you were before, on
Okay.
and on. I mean, I know your story because I'm living it,
Yeah,
and I say that, I think, in the same way that you did, that I'm not asking for sympathy. I sure feel bad for me. That's fine. I'm out of work. I'm not getting, but so are a ton of people that it's all perspective, right? I mean, I sit there and think I still have a roof over my head. Things aren't what they were. I'm having to work, 2 to 3 times as hard to make less,
yeah,
but that that's not a complaint. That's just reality. But when you can make an impact in someone else's life, and
yeah,
this is one of the great lessons that I learned early on, when a guy told me that there is mental equity being built with your clients or the people in your world, and they will remember how you treated them. You potentially and your wife enabled people to stay in business by what you did. What was the response from those tenants that were able to take advantage of that?
I think it was huge. I think one of the biggest hurdles we had initially with starting this business was, first of all, my wife like envisioning the business, creating the business, doing all the legal stuff, going through all of the architectural stuff, then the construction stuff, which we're still dealing with. Being a landlord, marketing, like all of these things. One of the things that we weren't able to really get to was establishing a culture in the company and around the space and inside of the space. So we did. I don't think we necessarily had that honest trust that you develop when you build a true culture. And I think when COVID-19 hit, it showed our tenants and our I call them our bosses, our moss bosses, um, that we actually care about them. And there's a reason why this business was started in the first place, and it wasn't for money. It was to allow a industry, a entrepreneur in an industry who aren't necessarily seen as entrepreneurs to scale and to run their own business, and to do their own everything with whatever they want, without any restriction, and still have the support of a salon, which pays. We pay all of their utilities. We pay for internet, water, trash, all of that. All you do is just pay rent. And so, that side was covered from a business perspective, you've got, obviously people are coming to us for those perks and those amenities, but from a culture perspective, we weren't necessarily able to do that. So when COVID-19 hit, it gave my wife a really, really strong opportunity to make a strong connection with them by saying, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to us in our industry. We know that we have to stay together. We're here for you and with you, if you're here with us. And so, really making that strong connection was pretty pivotal for us.
It's unbelievable to me the lessons learned during this pandemic, and they've come obviously at a financial cost, and let's not forget for many, thankfully, in my family, not medically at
Hmm.
this point. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I mean, the losses in terms of lives are obviously much greater than financial, but this has been a the greatest disruptor of all of our lifetimes. Yet
Yeah,
I don't know about you. For me, look, if we were to go back and say, could we do this over and not have it? Of course, I wouldn't want it. But
yeah,
I feel like there have been so many lessons learned and
yeah.
gained here. I'm guessing that you feel the same way.
So many lessons. Honestly, I feel like my life drastically changed. I entered in a whole new era as soon as COVID-19 hit. For me, there was the pre-COVID and post-COVID Kemet, and yeah, I learned so many different lessons from my Salon Studios to music in general, to what it meant to be a father, to what it meant to be an entrepreneur, to be a leader in the community, to really just like I had to step up, and I didn't have a choice. And I think a lot of us were faced with that reality. And I think a lot of the people that were doing good work, which I imagine, hopefully, I'm in that category. A lot of the people that were doing good work, that are able to weather the storm, are now seeing that there's even more opportunity to continue doing that good work. And now people are actually listening to people who are doing that good work. And I'm just really happy to see people like you, people like my friend Chris Good, people like my wife, all of us really, and the many, many thousands of people that are out there in the world and in the city rather, doing good work. Civic entrepreneurism and all that stuff. I'm really happy to see those people gain a new level of success. And for those who necessarily aren't doing that, or aren't, really, or aren't able to take advantage of these new opportunities that come from a pandemic or a disaster, I just encourage them to keep going, and perhaps just figure out a different format. A lot of things that I did had to change. From a music perspective, let's just talk about that. I don't know if that's okay with you.
Yeah, of course.
Um, yeah, I mean, one of the things that had to change for me was I couldn't necessarily rely on performance revenue anymore, um, because obviously I couldn't perform. And so what I had to do is really make a pivot. And actually, funny story, right before I joined Startland, I had repivoted or just pivoted my marketing and music agency, Kemet Creative, to mostly, and in fact, not mostly, but entirely music production, music licensing, and music consulting. And so that was that was a reflection of COVID-19, where like literally all of my revenue from creating live events got dried up, and so I had to make a pivot. And now I've casted my net wider than Kansas City, because during that time I was actually Kansas City's been great to me, and I spent a lot of time. I spent the last decade trying to build a culture here in Kansas City, and I think we've made some pretty great strides. But I wanted to cast the net even wider out to the hot spots of music like L.A., Atlanta, New York. So I was, full disclosure, looking for opportunities out there, and I actually got a few opportunities out there. And so one of the big ones was with Quincy Jones Productions, and really establishing and kind of trying to establish a relationship with them, because Quincy Jones is literally my idol.
Mm-hmm.
Like my musical idol. I don't think there's a better music producer out there. And so to work with them has been just amazing. And so with the music licensing with Kemet Creative, I've now started to focus more on music production, and allowing opportunities for other music producers and songwriters and singers to have these new avenues for revenue that they're trying to recapture based on not having any live performance revenue.
It's interesting because, and I hadn't thought about it like this, but I can relate in so many ways to you because, and I have no music ability. I just, as you know, I love music and I love live music. And on my end, the similarity is, I have no say. I can't broadcast baseball right now, and I get paid by the game like you get paid by the gig, and so that's out. Like, and there's like it's wasted energy to fight that or lament it because it's 100% out of your hands.
Exactly.
So you have to pivot and do other things. And then for me, with my speaking business, I very intentionally built it here in Kansas City over the last 3 years. I knew I could get into certain doors in the same way that with the reputation that you've built, that you could get in and do these live performances and reach out to a lot of faces that I remember. You were doing a concert in Westport this past winter, and you were naming people in the crowd that have been supporting you for 5 years, 10 years, and all of that.
Yeah.
So it's it's different when you jump out of Kansas City. I mean, it's, for lack of a better term, it's going from big fish in the small pond to little fish
Big one.
in the big pond, the big sea,
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it, right? What's the
Yeah.
expression? I just totally screwed that up. But
Yeah.
but it's different because you got to go about things in a way that you didn't before, right? I mean, you could knock on certain doors in the past and say, "Hey, it's Kemet the Phantom. Can
Yeah.
I talk to you about this?" Now you've got to let those people know who you are. So what was that process like?
For me, I just went into the room, or I guess the virtual room, I guess, if you will, with the idea that the whole city was behind me, and if I knew that I had the entirety of Kansas City, then I that gave me the confidence to approach these different areas and these different people who knew nothing about me, perhaps nothing about Kansas City. And I knew that on my resume, I could put down the mayor of Kansas City. I know that I could put down Joel Goldberg. I know that I can put down Tech Nine. I know that I can put down, Dre Taylor. I know that I can put down Chris Good. I know I can put down, all these really heavy hitters in Kansas City that are making just really impactful things happen. And so, that gave, I feel like my send off, which I thought would happen, would would be justified and blessed, if you will, by the fact that Kansas City has been such a pivotal part of my life, and like it was bigger than me. It was bigger than Kemet the Phantom, which I changed my name just to Kemet Coleman, by the way.
So you're
During,
good. No more Phantom.
yep, no more Phantom. I mean, like Phantom was definitely a result of growing up as a shy kid and really wanting to be
Mm-hmm.
make a statement, but not necessarily wanting to be directly in the spotlight, unless it made sense. But now, like, I think I still have, I'm still a bit introverted, still a bit shy, but like, I've re-socialized myself enough to have this public face. So like, Kemet Coleman just only made sense, and it just allowed me to really focus on one brand instead of two brands or many other brands. Because Kemet Coleman was a brand, and that was me doing the urbanism and kind of public speaking, community events, stuff like that. Kemet the Phantom was music, and so now it's all just one thing. So yeah,
So, so the next time you get on a stage, just Kevin Coleman.
Kemet Coleman.
Okay.
Yeah,
Look,
or Kemet. Yeah.
I suppose that there's some of your audience that, I mean, I've never walked up to you and said, "What's up, Phantom?" You know, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, you were
Yeah.
Kemet when the Phantom was attached to it. You're Kemet
Yeah.
when Coleman was attached to it. So
Hmm.
I to me, I think the name everybody remembers anyway is Kemet. But from a marketing, from a branding standpoint, it certainly makes sense. And I'm pretty sure that those that spent years and years listening to the live music of Kemet the Phantom and the Fantastics won't see anything different in terms of the name. I wanted to ask you about that because your band is it is one. It's interesting to hear you talk about being on the introverted side because anyone that sees you on stage would never know that. We hear that story from so many performers,
Yeah.
and you are known for your energy on stage and including the audience and really getting fired up. And it's such a fun performance to watch because there's so much going on. I mean, it's
Yeah.
depending on who's in town and who's around. And I know there's some men and women that come in and out of the group that could be what 7, 8, 10 people on stage, and
Yeah.
and you got horns and you got keyboard and you got everything going on, along with your vocals, and this is a band, the Fantastics, that lives for being around people.
Yeah. Yeah.
You guys, I'm not saying you can't do it without people. And
Yeah.
I see in your basement right now, I was down there for a little bit of a jam session. But
Yeah.
even that's hard to do. I mean, right? You got to get people in a closed space to be able to do that. So are you guys able to play in any way right now?
No, we've been on hiatus for several months now. I think we've had talks about coming back together recently, actually, the last couple of weeks before I went on vacation, and we were thinking about doing a live stream with DJ Joe, who has a pretty gnarly live stream setup. Uh, Out in Hy-Vee Arena. So yeah, we've been pretty much on hiatus. That's the skinny of it. Because yeah, you're right. I mean, the Fantastics are very reliant upon the energy of the crowd. I think a lot of situations. So our best shows are when the crowd is engaged fully. Our
Mm-hmm.
best shows are not when it's a sit down or just kind of a stone face type of scenario. We literally feed on. We are literally a reflection of the crowd. And from a visual standpoint, energy standpoint rather, from a musical standpoint, yeah, we are a band of 7 to 10 people, just given who's in town and who's able to play. Really more of a collective of musicians that like to play together, more less than a band. I mean, we've only created 2 albums, yeah, out of 10 years of being around, and we focus more on live music, and that's the truth. I think most of our fans would agree with that. So yeah, we have not been able to bounce back, if you will, from COVID-19, but let's just say that things are starting to pick up again.
Yeah, I can't wait till you guys are back on a stage and entertaining everyone on a Friday or Saturday night or whatever it is. It's truly, and I'll just tell everyone, keep your eyes out and follow Kemet on social media, and you can certainly check out his website. It's just an action-packed, fun performance. If you like any kind of music, whatever type of music you like, you'll enjoy this because it's it's one of the things that I love about your group is that you could perform in any type of venue. I mean, what
Yeah,
was it? It's been maybe a year and a half or 2 years. I don't know. You guys, I saw you at this house party, which was one of the coolest experiences ever,
yeah,
in like an art gallery that was just so intimate,
yeah,
and and then it could be at a bar or whatever it is. But you hit so many genres of music.
Hmm.
To label you guys as any one type of genre to me doesn't make sense. I mean, I think you and I have talked about this before. How do you label the Fantastics?
We pretty much just call it dance music because of the fact that it kind of runs the gamut of funk, rap, jazz, rock, soul, R&B. Yeah, all of that. Kind of all. I mean, sometimes we dabble in kind of some. I wouldn't say full on gospel, but we have like some riffs in there that kind of
Hmm.
is definitely reminiscent of the black experience. Let's just put it
Yeah,
like that. The
yeah,
whole experience of blackness when it comes to music, we pretty much do, and which a lot of people can't necessarily put a finger on or recognize
hmm,
even black people because of the fact that it literally like we can go from doing fast domino to a style from fast domino to tech nine to Pharrell to just kind
hmm.
of whatever
Anything.
so yeah.
No, it reminds me of a couple things. One of my favorite groups of the last 15, 20 years is a group out of LA called Ozomatli. They've won Grammy Awards. And, it's the same thing. Like on the surface, you might label them sort of like Latin music, but at any given moment, it could be rap, it could be rock,
Yeah.
it could be, there's a little bit of element of funk to it, but it's the same. It's like this just major high energy. You could watch one thing on the stage and miss something else,
Yeah.
because these guys are doing this and this is doing that. But it also, and maybe this is a stretch, maybe not. This will be the second time that I've referenced this week because we watched it last Friday night. We've seen it in the theater too. But I think about Hamilton a lot because Hamilton has so much going on, the performance, that to just label it a Broadway show will be short sighted. To label it just rap, there's a rap element to it. It's beautiful. But I think that people make of it what they see or what they want, which I think is so much of where you guys are at too. See, I just now have tied Kemet and the Fantastics, Kemet Coleman and the Fantastics with
Yeah.
Hamilton. That's a pretty good
Hey,
thing. But
there, second.
it it leads to a deeper discussion and one that I've been having regularly on this show. And I didn't really save it for last for a reason other than there's so much to talk about. But I've been having so many discussions about race, and here we are in your city. I mean, I call this your city. This is your home. It's my home, but I've been here 12 plus years. I'm just wondering what you think about everything that is going on. I feel like every week that I've had discussions on this show, uh, things have changed.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
ways they haven't either. But, where we are today versus, say, where we were the day that George Floyd was murdered and everything in between,
Yeah.
to me personally, there's so many things that still um, are upsetting and will continue to be upsetting. And there's so many moments where I'm like, wait, are we making any progress here at all? And I can only imagine as a 48-year-old white guy that is feeling that way over the last month or two, what it must be like for a guy in his, I don't know, guessing your later 30s, whatever you are, having
33.
experienced 33.
Yeah.
Wow, man, I gave you too many years.
It's just
Which
wisdom.
is,
You gave me wisdom.
well, you got more wisdom than a 33-year-old. But, 33 years of your life that you've been dealing with this. So what's your perspective right now? Because a lot's going on in these last 4, 5, 6 weeks.
Yeah, I would say it has been a very, very, very fascinating thing to be alive during. You know, I wear this hat because it was 1619 when the first slave came to the United States, and that was 401 years ago.
Hmm.
And so my ancestors have been a part of this struggle for over 400 years, and it's it's an interesting thing to see the descendants of people like Frederick Douglass and the descendants of people like Booker T. Washington really finally have a stage to make social change, to make civic change, to make racial justice a thing, and to be given almost a, for lack of better words, a celebrity status um, because of the result of the lynching of George Floyd, which, in my opinion, you know, in my opinion, put the full weight of racism on a person's neck for over 8 minutes, and that allowed us as a country to witness, to witness empirical evidence of
Mm-hmm.
racism, something that people like me, something like people like everybody from 1619 on, a black person at least in this country has been trying to convey in many, many, many different ways. I think everybody finally saw that, or at least got a short glimpse of it. Now, where I'm at now is, I think it's been fantastic seeing a lot of companies saying they're making changes to their, to their wording, nomenclature, to their policies, to how they represent their companies with being more equitable. I think that's great, and those companies can and should continue to do that. The problem is we've got a lot of systemic issues that are literally just in the air we breathe, um, with COVID-19 and how over I think it's 60% of all cases in Kansas City of COVID-19 are people of color,
Mm-hmm.
and like how that is literally racism in the air, and how the fact that our communities were built on keeping black people in one place, and keeping and the rest for white people who are able to at least able to have those the economic means to move wherever they want. Mobility has been one of the biggest issues facing the black community, whether that's economic mobility or whether that's literally getting around and being able to do the basic necessities of life. And so when it comes to COVID-19 and George Floyd, I have a song called "The Virus" on my previous album, and that song is basically talking about how the first virus that's been around um, for over 400 years in this country that we still haven't really tackled yet is white supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
And so, before before COVID-19, we had this virus that is literally embedded itself in every part of everything that we do and see in this country, and has just some crazy effects on African Americans, the people that have been disenfranchised, on all of us as a country. And so, yeah, from a city standpoint, Kansas City, just briefly, um, I'm starting to see people who saw my blackness as a threat come around and accept it and try to, at least, and want to work with me. There's several cases, and I don't want to call anybody out specifically, but there's been several cases where my ideas have been shot down, and I've been reprimanded based on the fact that they were hip hop related or just overall black. Just kind of not having that watered down, filtered, part of our aspect. And so now I'm starting to see them come around like, hey, actually, let's work together.
Mm-hmm.
So that's exciting to see. And really, that, it's almost one of those things that, my dad raised me to understand the complexities of white supremacy. My name is Kemet. My name was the name of ancient Egypt, which was the greatest nation on earth. It was the first United States. And most people don't see it like that. They see it as they see what's the guy? What's the everything in the movies that shows either the weird mythology, or like, you got a white guy with a turban on, running around the pyramids. So
Pharaoh.
yeah, exactly. White pharaohs. I mean, like, these were black people. So anyway, yeah, I think I was raised with the idea that your blackness will be a threat. You are. I'm raising. He immediately gave me power by giving my name, like the most powerful black name you could possibly give someone. And so, really, for me, this whole situation with George Floyd and COVID-19 has activated me as a black man and understand my own power, to really make the changes that are better for everyone.
And I think, it's activated, and I've talked about this a lot. It's activated a lot of people like me that felt like we always got along with people. Not just, oh, I have a black friend, but just, hey, I've always tried to treat everyone fairly. And it was extremely eye opening, scary, humbling, and disappointing
Yeah.
to for it to take this many years to understand it on a deeper level.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas now, watching that murder, or as you said, that lynching, was it was almost like this pathway to see everything that we didn't see before.
Yeah.
For some of us, I think that the part that's truly disheartening to me, I can't change the past, but what I do understand from my standpoint is that there's so much more I could have and should have done. And so I'm vowing to do that now. I want to have these discussions. I want to help in whatever small way I can. Doesn't mean that me and those that think like me suddenly feel like we're going to come in here and we're the answer. But if we can be part of the solution, that's a good thing. What breaks my heart and is disheartening, and it's probably just a waste of my time, is when you start going and seeing the comments on social media, which are just flat out racist. They never, by the way, very rarely come with an actual picture and a name.
Yeah.
It's usually a picture of an animal or a scenic picture or whatever it is. But like yesterday, the Cincinnati Reds put out a tweet of a picture of their star, um, their star first baseman, who's white. He's Canadian, Joey Votto. He's probably been the biggest name player in Cincinnati the last 12, 15 years.
Yeah.
And, the day that, not the day, but a couple days after the George Floyd murder happened, he put out a statement that basically said a little bit of what I was just saying, how horrified he was at not understanding it before, amidst the many discussions that he had had with black teammates over the years and never fully grasping it, and suddenly it dawned on him. So he shows up, the biggest name in Cincinnati yesterday for batting practice in a Black Lives Matter T-shirt.
Wow.
Kudos to the Reds for tweeting it,
Yeah.
and then to read the comments of
Yeah.
people saying, I'm not going to a game anymore, I'm not supporting this anymore. It almost makes me sit there and think, when people make this comment about all lives matter too, and I feel like we got to just keep explaining why that's not the point of all of this. Like,
Right.
in the simplest form, just if it helps, just say Black Lives, comma, TOO, Black Lives Matter, comma, TOO. We already know all those other lives matter.
Exactly.
Everything that you're saying, why is COVID affecting more? Why were so many lives, and I don't know the numbers, uh, lost in Katrina that were
Mm-hmm.
so disproportionately black?
That's
Because
right.
of that ability to be mobile or not, to be or being immobile. So
Exactly.
I find when I go down that rabbit hole, it's really really disheartening. But then I sit there and think, okay, you've dealt with that your whole life.
Yeah.
If you're 20 years old, if you're 40 years old, if you're 60 years old, if you're 80 years old, you've dealt with that for your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you push through that? I mean, to me right now, I want to see that stuff a little bit because I want to be reminded that there's still so much work to be done.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, I see so much hope every day.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what people are grappling with right now and why people are so upset is they have to pick a side. You can't be in the middle anymore. If you sit on the fence too long, your groin's gonna hurt. So I think people are irritated because they have to pick a side. And I think with the current administration in the White House, that's becoming abundantly clear. I feel like he's been a magnet to really draw out these people, draw out the racism in a lot of people, and people are having to pick a side now that you see a long like a long attempted murder be successful by a police officer, a symbol of hope, right? To a lot of people, a symbol of freedom, um, a symbol of the American dream. Um, literally, you know, dismantle the life of someone, a black man, um, is also forcing people to say, "Oh my God," kind of to your point. Wow, I guess I get it. Like I mean, as much as I can, I guess I understand what my black colleagues and friends have been saying over this year. This is wrong. This is ridiculous. Um, so I think I think people are definitely having to wake up on that. And so, to your question, how to push through that, I think it's exactly that, just pushing through it. If you, only way to get through hell is to keep going. And so for me, I'm just, really taking a newer responsibility, a new role, and I'm encouraging every ally of the Black community to be as active, and say the same things that you're saying, do the same things that you're doing, Joel, to really get this message across that this has to stop.
Yeah.
It's not sustainable. It is not progressive. There's nothing. There's nothing that is great about American racism. Period. And so, for me, my role and my responsibility, I'm not necessarily the loudest person out there that says, Black Lives Matter, but you can obviously tell that I spend a lot of time with this concept. And, me even taking the phantom from my name is literally me embracing the fact that there's so much more work to do, and I have to play a greater role in, facilitating and creating agency, and not only white people, which I feel like are innately, unfortunately, innately responsible, have a responsibility to address, but for also Black people to put their best foot forward and to really show the ingenuity, the genius, and the creativity, and the innovation of black black people, and that the struggle that we've gone through has created something that all will benefit from. And so, you know, I just love creating opportunities for those thoughts, those schools of thoughts to happen. And I think I just saw Kiana Sinks
Mhm.
send a comment. I didn't see it, but
Hold on, I'll pop it back up.
yeah,
And she said two things. One, they have to pick a side. She's agreeing with you, Kiana. By the way, um, she's really become my newest pandemic friend
nice.
because we connected early on. She had me on her show. I had her on mine. We went down and recorded together. It was the first time we met in person. Our tip your cap videos last week for the Negro Leagues Museum, which, in some ways now we all feel insufficient when they were able to get three former presidents to do it,
Yeah,
and an astronaut from up in space and all that. But everybody's taking part, which is such a cool movement and great for the museum. And
yeah,
then she and I went over, put on masks, and went over for a little bit to the museum just because I had to go buy another hat because I love to do that.
right.
And then um, it's my show, so if she wants to drop that kind of language, that's fine, Kiana. You know that I have it in me too. Now I'm just giving her a hard time. I love that girl. I love what she is doing for her community,
Hmm.
and here's a kid. I'll call her a kid. She's 25.
Right.
You got her by 8 years, but she is she's waking up every day, changing people's lives or changing the world,
Absolutely.
and so I'm so inspired by what she's doing. I wanted to share something before we start to wrap things up, but I just found this as you were talking, and it's what I was referring to yesterday. But that's powerful, man. I mean,
Yeah.
here is a veteran, longtime baseball player. By the way, playing for an organization that used to have an owner
Hmm.
who was racist,
Mm.
in Marge Shot. And that's him saying that this is the side that I've chosen. And
Yeah.
I'm choosing it very publicly. I am choosing this knowing that every camera is going to do it. And now that is an organization. And look, you mentioned it before about organizations speaking out and taking stances. Now they got to put their money where their mouth is,
Exactly.
and this isn't enough. I certainly agree with that. But the Cincinnati Reds didn't have to post that, and their message, you read it quite simply there. What do we have? We have 7 words. That's our first baseman. That's pride there.
Yeah.
He's ours, and
Hmm.
Black Lives Matter. That that's not the end all be all. But to me, as I saw that yesterday, I'm like, man, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah. That gives me hope too. Over the course of my life, I've seen a lot of hopeful things happen. So the proof is in the pudding for me. The long term game is where I'm focused. I see a lot of short term um, support, and that's great. I love it, and I think like something like that is like it surprises me that stuff like that is happening.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what would be a better surprise is if it continues. And
Yes.
I think, really putting the pressure on the sports teams is really going to make a huge effect, as you know, as a lover of sports and a professional in sports. I think there's a greater responsibility and a greater opportunity for the sports teams to do that. When I see things like Patrick Mahomes, clinching a $500 million, 10-year contract, it really makes a statement that there's an opportunity here to really push the Chiefs organization, to really push Patrick Mahomes also to continue to be a symbol for racial justice. Which necessarily you don't necessarily think of Patrick like that. But I want to make it I want to make a personal try to really kind of drop these bugs in his ear somehow to say like, hey man, like you are literally you have a really huge opportunity here to make an impact,
Mm-hmm.
and you've already done that in Kansas City. You've already given people hope, and really brought a whole city together. There's nothing that brings people together in a more equitable fashion than that I can think of than sports. And when you've got people that who cares when you're watching a game, you're focused on the sports,
Right.
and you're at a game, it's just all fun. So like I think sports is a huge way for us to push this message through.
It's why sports and entertainment, sports, music, the arts,
Yeah,
all can do that. Now, I agree. I mean, typically sports, you don't have, you could have in the lyrics, you could have in whatever the messaging, it could be viewed as political, but maybe that's where we're getting with sports too. And, I so often have heard people say, stick to sports.
yep,
And I am by design very apolitical publicly because I don't want that involved. I want every Royals fan to watch and not tune out because of my personal beliefs. But there's certain things to me right now that just have to be said.
yeah,
And, I could leave politics out of it. You brought up the president, and I think you brought him up fairly because, just a couple of days ago, and I know there are a million examples, he's going after Bubba Wallace, the NASCAR driver, and questioning things there. And there's no reason. Like,
yeah,
if people, we don't need to have a whole Confederate flag discussion here, but if people are going to leave that sport because there's not a Confederate flag, or because every driver is supporting the one black driver,
right.
then go away. I mean, you know,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I agree with that, and that's the reason why I'm wearing this Monarch shirt that I'm wearing right
nice.
now. Because the Monarchs really embody this idea that black is beautiful, and they did it by necessity, sure, but I think what a lot of people saw from that is they're right. I mean, if you take black people out of any sport, or a lot of the more popular sports here in the United States, like what do you got?
Yeah.
You're missing a lot of swagger. You're missing a lot of style. You're missing a lot of talent. You're missing a lot of players, honestly. So I think, yeah, I mean, I'm a huge advocate for really embracing the blackness that is within these organizations, because they literally are the DNA of these of the I guess the community facing sides of these organizations. Now, where we have the back end of things where it's on the management side, the owners and things like that, we've got a lot of work to do.
Hmm.
But I think this is a good first step.
I don't know if you saw it, but there's just the news out this week is that there's an ownership group, or they're putting together a group to try to either get a team to Nashville for baseball or to start a team. And that city's set up really well for it with the way they've grown, but it is going to be a majority black owned team.
Woo!
And
Never
yeah,
heard
and
it. Didn't hear
so
about that.
that just came out this week. I know that Dave Dombrowski, who's a longtime executive in baseball, he helped the Marlins win a championship. He was in Detroit for years, and then he was in Boston, and he's moved on. He's involved in that group. He is white, but all the reports. There's a big story in USA Today. I'll send it to you.
Hmm.
That they are trying to form this ownership group that'll be majority black owned, which I think would be huge. That the time is right. I don't say that in a way that the time wasn't right in the past, but if there's ever been an opportunity to say, here, let's go right now.
Yeah.
And by the way, forming an ownership group and buying a team or bringing a franchise to a new city or starting one does not happen overnight.
No.
But I think it could be game changing.
Yeah.
To see faces in management and ownership of color,
Yeah.
and in the same way, Kemet, that I'm going off on a tangent here. I know we're going to wrap up, but I remember growing up a little bit before your time that people made a big deal about a black quarterback, and no
Well.
one does that anymore,
Yeah.
right? That was racist.
Yeah.
And why don't we do it anymore? Because we understood that the best person should be in that job. And
Right.
um, no one sits there and counts the black quarterbacks. But I remember as a kid growing up, and it was like Doug Williams winning the Super Bowl MVP with Washington. It included black quarterback. When Randall Cunningham broke in with my Philadelphia Eagles when I was a kid, and he was the guy that would come in for third and long, and he'd just go out there and run, and everybody would talk about what an athlete he was.
Right. Right.
So when I see stuff like that, I do see some progress in terms of stripping away those false expectations or perceptions.
Hmm.
But that needs to happen with ownership. That needs to happen with general managers. That needs to happen with head coaches and managers. I mean, it's still a massive minority, and it makes no sense.
Right. Yeah. It's literally the entire system needs an overhaul,
Yeah,
needs a reset. Honestly, and I
and
think
that's just sports. I mean, we
yeah,
could say that about any
exactly.
corporation, right?
Totally, yeah, that's right. And that's why I think people in every single industry need to step up. And I think with the example of sports, there is empirical evidence of success when it comes to black management and black owners in sports. And I think the Negro Leagues is a great example of that. The Negro Leagues being at one point the biggest, the most successful black company organization in the country. When people would, it was literally a part of the culture. And I think you'll start to see a lot of the benefits of blackness really uh, come about if these institutional and structural um, uh, changes happen to include more black people, black women and men. And I say women specifically because the women have black women are literally in just as much, if not more, need than black men to also have these same opportunities. Um, but yeah, I think if we start to see that, then we'll start to see that this is a good thing. This is a beautiful thing, and there was a reason why black, Negro League baseball games were well attended. We know how to do this. I think we know how to do it well. We appeal to all five senses. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing. We need to definitely focus on that and make sure that these the both sides of the coin, if you will, when it comes to sports, when it comes to organizations, not just the community facing ones, are represented.
Well, I'll post a couple of final comments. Judy Tomat, who's been a guest on the show, does wonderful work in the world of foster care. Uh, Says totally agree, and Kiana, uh, we still have not recovered economically from it since Negro Leagues baseball left us, and the entire system, every sector of the USA. That's what we're covering
Yeah,
right now, and she gets it. I know that. I love to pop her stuff up because she's awesome,
yeah,
and because she watches every day too. So I got to give her credit for that. Well, this has been awesome. I'm so excited for everything you're doing right now. I don't actually. Let me ask you one last question
yeah,
because maybe I can learn from it too, let alone everybody else. But as someone that's dealing with this every day, how do you balance it all? Because one of the greatest challenges to me of an entrepreneur who never is doing just one thing is wearing so many hats and time management. Are you good at that? Is that a struggle? I'm not a good structure guy. I'm trying to learn,
yeah.
but how do you manage it?
I'm learning too. A lot of and I'll keep this brief, but unfortunately, a lot of the way that I go through life is in a very creative way. So pretty much every time, I'm like trying to find a new creative way to do something. So now, really, I'm just been focused on. I've noticed that if I empower other people, then I don't necessarily have to do these. Uh, I don't have to do that because, like, when I empower the people, I immediately get the benefit of having a team. And so that's my advice to a lot of people that are trying to juggle a lot: create a team. have a network that you can rely on and that rely on you. And if I could say one last thing before I
Yeah,
leave,
of course
um,
you can.
an opportunity that came about and that I'm actually getting ready to hop off this call to go to is want to announce officially that that I'm doing a beer with Crane Brewery called Black is Beautiful, and it's they approached me with the idea that was inspired by another brewery down in Texas, and the beer will be out available in stores in Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, and Iowa sometime late this month or early next month. So be on the
Wow.
lookout for Black is Beautiful. I'm actually going to be brewing. They're going to have me like pitching
Wow.
in grain and stuff like that. It's going to be dope. So take a
You
look.
doing that now? You going to do that right now?
I'm going to do that right now.
Dude, I suddenly have fallen into at best a very distant second place for cool things that might have happened to Kemet today because you're going to brew a beer. That's pretty. I hope you have better experiences than just this podcast, but that's awesome.
Yeah,
I can't
man.
wait to get that. Keep me updated when that is released because I want to make sure that I share that with everybody. And before I share it with everybody, I'll go to the store and buy it first,
Yeah,
and then I'll share it with everybody else. But congrats, that's absolutely amazing.
absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, my friend. Well, congrats on all the success. Startland News, new gig there. Um, Moss Salon Studios with you and your wife, and let's give her all the credit there, or much of the
Yes,
credit there, right? But
every bit of that.
let's be sure we do that. You guys are also awesome parents and busy with the kids. Still have the music. Your pivots there. Uh, Losing the Phantom. Some will always remember that. That's okay, but it's now
Yeah,
officially Kemet Coleman. Bottom line, check out Kemet at kemetcoleman.com. If you see that he or the Fantastics are performing somewhere, follow them on Instagram. They've got great stuff. If you see that they're performing, just trust
don't
me.
miss it.
It's as the kids say. I'm too old for this. It's dope. So go check them out. All right, Kemet, I appreciate it. Go enjoy your day as a brewer,
Right?
and
I
I
will
can't wait to taste that.
definitely. All right, man.
Uh,
Sounds good. Appreciate you having me on.
yeah, a little shout out to the BTC, right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. BTC, what's up?
There we go. All right,
All right,
Kemet, congrats on everything, and so good to be able to visit with my friend who just. I mean, I think everything he does is awesome, and I think there's much more to come. So, appreciate everyone watching another episode of Rounding the Bases Live, presented by Enterprise Bank and Trust. Hashtag no stopping you. You could certainly uh, get in touch with them at their website, enterprisebank.com. Another episode tomorrow, actually, another music related episode tomorrow. On Friday, it'll be a little bit of baseball and pandemic talk. I do a little bit of that, and there's certainly a lot going on with the testing and the Royals and getting back in a little over 2 weeks, we hope. But for now, thanks to Kemet Coleman and Enterprise Bank, I'm Joel Goldberg. See you tomorrow on Rounding the Bases Live, presented by Enterprise Bank and Trust.